take this pretty seriously. I think that whatever we define mystical experience as, which is indeed very complicated, certainly there's something there that I think is still beneficial for people, and that's part of what I'm fascinated by. And it has a long history. I think we can learn a lot from that history.
What's this project all about?
Well, it's about a conference to talk about mysticism and mystical experience. And one of the main things about it is I want to approach it from many different fields. So literature, history, religious studies, linguistics, also psychology and cognitive science. So all these fields can give you an idea of how mysticism is something that can be approached from many different in many different ways.
Yeah, well, we're bringing together our two specialties in that Laura works in the modern period and I work in the medieval period. We were really interested in looking at continuities, differences, contrasts between mysticism as it is seen and understood and described in these two moments. And so this definition, we want to center the conference around a search for a definition. How can we talk about this? How can we explain what mysticism is? And how much does that change from one period to another? Is there a way in which we can talk about mysticism transhistorically, transculturally, or do we need to always look for more specific terminology that fits the specific situation? So these are some of the things we want to investigate in the conference.
I'll be teaching a class actually on women mystics from the Middle Ages to the present next fall, and it'll be happening while the conference is going on. And I'm hoping that we will have a kind of wiki type thing going on where students can actually start working not just on definitions of mysticism, but of other problematic terms.
Well, it raises a lot of really interesting questions about how we think about the body, how we think about religion, how we think about religious experience, and ways we have of talking about that. It goes to questions of body and mind that are, very relevant to us. Questions about how we can talk in a university context about religious experience and ways in which models for having those kinds of conversations have changed. What are the terminologies that can be used, and how can people from different disciplinary backgrounds contribute to this kind of conversation? Someone who's looking at it from the point of view of the sciences might be interested in how the brain is working, what happens in the brain during moments of meditation. This is something we were talking about earlier. A historian is interested in change over time. What happens, what are the surroundings and the cultural context for each of these experiences. Literary scholars like to look at the kinds of texts that come out of these experiences and the way in which literary expression feeds into mystical experience and the understanding of what mysticism is about. So these are the different kinds of things that we would be bringing together, and I think those are all very interesting, relevant questions.
Where do women come in the picture, and why? Why, are there more mystical experiences in women? Are they more? Do they have a certain capacity that men don't?
Well, in the late medieval period, there are a lot of women mystics, and it seems to be sort of a predominant trend that mystical experience is primarily described by women. So the question is, why is that? And I think there's a double sense in this late medieval period that women are susceptible, and I say double in the sense that it's both negative and positive. Mm-hmm. Women are more vulnerable to the environment, right? So in this sense, women can be vulnerable to demonic possession, for example. That's the bad side. The positive side of this is that they can also be more open to experiences of the divine.
I would say that in the 19th and 20th century, which is what I work on, there tends to be less direct mystical experience, although when there is, it often is female. But a lot of the rhetoric that you see is that women are indeed still considered more vulnerable and porous, but they're often labeled as hysterical. So this is a kind of big rhetoric that I think we have inherited really mainly from the field of psychology, where even when psychology was being invented in the late 19th century, it was a big question: how would you distinguish between true mystical experiences that were good for people, whatever that meant, how could you separate these from experiences of insanity? And who had the authority to do so, especially now that the church was no longer considered to have the authority to do so. So how would the field of psychology answer this question? For me, working on a more modern period, I've really been struck by how in the 20th century there tends to be a lot of suspicion towards mystical experience. You know, it tends to be seen as kind of too vague and confusing and perhaps, you know, false. And overall, I think the 20th century is very suspicious of spiritual experience in general and has therefore sort of lost its ability to talk about it. And it's been fascinating for me to see that now there are a lot of scholars, not just in historical fields or literary fields, but in fields like psychology and science that are interested in spiritual experience as part of a more holistic connection to the world.